UFC 310 just took place. Shavkat Rakhmonov is 19-0, and Alexandre Pantoja might be the best men's flyweight fighter of all time. Today, we're going to do a full card recap from the early prelim opener all the way up to the main event. So stick around to hear my thoughts after UFC 310. I'm Wyatt, and this is Fight Society. And before we get into the video, please make sure to like, subscribe, become a channel member if you want access to bonus content. You can do that through the link in the description of this video or the join button on our channel homepage. Thank you very much. Back to the video. Okay, so UFC 310 just took place last night, the final UFC pay-per-view of 2024. We had a main event for the flyweight championship of Kai Asakura versus Alexandre Pantoja, and we had a co-main event of undefeated up-and-comers, Shavkat Rakhmonov at 18-0 and Machado Garry at 15-0. Was actually a late notice replacement because the welterweight champion Belal Muhammad pulled out with an injury or with an infection in his foot. We're going to start with the canceled bouts that did not make it to the card. First off, Rizvan Cunha versus Martin Buday. They just didn't rebook this fight. That one got pulled off the card. And then Taliesin Teixeira against Brzeski. Brzeski actually still ended up staying on the card. Teixeira pulled out, and Brzeski ended up fighting Kennedy Nzechukwu on short notice. Aside from that, Vicente Luque versus Nick Diaz was supposed to be on the card. It was originally supposed to be in Abu Dhabi on August 3rd. That got canceled. It got moved to this card. It got canceled. It seems as though Nick Diaz is dealing with some personal things. Won't go into it too much in the video. Just wish him the best. That's about it. That fight got pulled off of the card. What was supposed to be the main event, Belal Muhammad versus Shavkat Rakhmonov. And as you can see, that got pulled off the card as well with a Belal foot injury, like I mentioned at the top of the video. And then Tatiana Suarez versus Verna Jandiroba was also supposed to be on the card. That fight didn't get rebooked. We'll actually get to that in a minute because Tatiana Suarez did just get bumped into a title shot with Wei Lee. Now, we'll get to that announcement in a minute, and I'll do a separate video for the UFC 312 announcements too. Those are the fizzled and canceled bouts on the card. And we move on to the early prelim opener of Kenny Nzechukwu against Lukasz Brzeski. Kennedy Nzechukwu, he just moved up to heavyweight. He was cutting a lot of weight to make 205. He's about 240 pounds. He just fought Chris Barnett on the UFC 308 card. He got the win there, and then he gets a first-round finish here against Lukasz Brzeski. At 9-6, I assume Lukasz Brzeski's getting released from the UFC following this weekend, but we'll see on the roster update on Tuesday. Kennedy Nzechukwu looks good, and he's big. I think he could probably put on about 10 more pounds. He's about 235 right now, 240. I think that he could really fill out nice to like 245, 250, and be a problem at heavyweight, at least until like the top 8 or 5 guys. And so he wins, right hook, drops Brzeski, finishes with ground and pound, TKO. Good win for Nzechukwu. He's 2-0 at heavyweight now. We move up to the next fight, Chase Hooper and Clay Guida. Chase Hooper was in the UFC at like 19, 20 years old. At featherweight, he has now since grown into what looks like a very dangerous lightweight. He's moved up in weight. His jiu-jitsu's there. His striking's there. He went up against Clay Guida, an established vet. As you can see, 63 pro fights. With that loss, he went to 38-25 for his career. And Dana White said that Clay Guida should retire after. We'll get to the 3 guys that Dana said should retire after the fight. But Clay Guida and Chase Hooper, they competed in a grappling match several years ago where Chase Hooper won via guillotine, I think it was. And Chase Hooper was all over Clay Guida to start the fight. High level, high pace grappling exchanges that just ended up with Chase Hooper snatching up an arm, and he finished with an armbar. Nasty jiu-jitsu. I think Chase Hooper's a problem at 145. I think with a win over Clay Guida, he's like 1 or 2 more wins from a ranked opponent. And I'm really excited to see how he does at 155. Lightweight continues to grow as one of the most exciting weight classes in the UFC. We move on from there. Michael Chiesa. Now, I picked Max Payne Griffin to win this fight because Michael Chiesa is a commentator. He doesn't seem locked in on fighting, but he beat Max Griffin on the feet. He beat him in the grappling, and then he subbed him in round 3. He won the first 2 rounds and got a 3rd round finish. Says he wants to main event UFC Seattle, which is on February 22nd of 2025. He said that they don't have a main event. I'm fairly certain the main event is Brendan Allen and Fluffy Hernandez at middleweight, but they might throw Michael Chiesa on the card against a ranked opponent, something like that. And you know, I thought Chiesa was washed. He looked good. He did beat a 39-year-old Max Payne Griffin, so I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, let's get him a top 5 guy, a top 10 guy. Michael Chiesa is still elite. He's just he's good enough to still fight. We move on from there to Josh Van, who fought Cody Durden, won a 3-round decision. Very exciting flyweight fight. Joshua Van's going to break into the flyweight rankings with this win because Cody Durden was like 14 or 15 in the rankings. So Josh Van's going to be able to break into the rankings with this win. 3-round decision. He lost the first round and then 1, 2, and 3, in my opinion. Crispy boxing, and he throws kill shots every single time that he throws. Crispy, fast, very exciting prospect in Joshua Van. I think that he does have a ceiling, though, because he is very undersized for 125 pounds, which is crazy to say considering that it's the smallest weight class, but he's somebody that would benefit from a 115 weight class, which for men is never going to exist in the UFC. So I think Josh Van is extremely exciting. I think that at some point that size difference is going to cost him. It almost cost him in the Durden fight. He got a little sloppy, a little overzealous, letting combos go, and Durden would land one punch that wobbled Van. And keep in mind, Charles Johnson just KO'd Van earlier this year. Joshua Van gets his second or third win of 2024. So shout out to him. He went up against Cody Durden. Cody Durden really brought it. Honestly, he didn't quit at all until like from the opening bell to the final bell. Cody Durden was swinging, took a lot of damage. And that's one thing too. Cody Durden's tough as nails, but he got hit with some big shots, like the hardest shots possible from Joshua Van, 10 or more times in this fight. And so that's part of my worry about Josh Van at flyweight, is he went up against Cody Durden, who's not by any means a top 5 guy at flyweight. He was way smaller physically, so he got kind of dominated in the grappling department in the first round, couldn't get up, couldn't break the clinch. And then he was taking iffy shots from Cody Durden and getting wobbled, and he was also landing big shots on Cody Durden, and Cody Durden ate them just fine. And Josh Van got through this fight, but I talked about it in my prediction videos and all of that. Josh Van is just somebody that relies too much on his chin for being undersized for the weight class. So I hope that his ceiling's high, but I think Joshua Van's ceiling is like the top 6, top 7 guys. I don't think he beats like a Brandon Moreno or a Pantoja or a Kai Kara France or even like a Steve Urseg, somebody like that. So Cody Durden, tough as nails, didn't get the win, but hung in there. Joshua Van breaks into the rankings. We'll see what's next. Probably a top 10 guy. He's a very likable guy. They like him. And yeah, we'll see what's next. Good win for Josh Van. Moving up from there, Eryk Anders, second round, ground and pound stoppage. I picked Chris Weidman because Eryk Anders sucks, to be honest. And then I picked him also because Chris Weidman's willing to cheat. He's willing to poke guys in the eyes, ready to give him the old open hand 1-2, poke him in the eyes like he did on Cedricus Dumont. No, not on Cedricus Dumont, on Bruno Silva. That was the New Jersey card where Nursultan Ruzaboyev also poked Cedricus Dumont in the eyes too. Crazy stuff. Eryk Anders, he came out, he looked fat. I hate to say it, but he looked out of shape, slow, and old. And Weidman looked just old. Weidman looked in shape and just old. Like, he didn't look incredibly slow, but it just is, he couldn't take shots so well. You could see that he kind of quit in there. It's actually crazy to think about. I think Chris Weidman started his career 14-0. And now he's 16-8. Interesting. Now, this fight should have gotten stopped a lot sooner. Chris Weidman took way more damage than he needed to, and then he complained about the stoppage. I don't love Chris Weidman's like blatant disregard for the rules. Like the way he talks about Bruno Silva after almost blinding him, and then the way he complained about this stoppage after getting saved in there by the ref. I think it was Keith Peterson, maybe Mark Goddard, but they did him some very, very former champion, veteran fighter, legend of the sport type of favors in there. And he still complained after getting stopped. And they let that go on for way too long. There was another fight that went on way too long as well. And we'll get to that in a second. Eryk Anders gets the win. I don't know what you do with either of these guys. Chris Weidman, retire. Eryk Anders, I don't know, go get beat up by a prospect a few more times before you retire. Two old guys that were supposed to fight at Madison Square Garden just so that Weidman, being an East Coast guy, being a New York guy, could fight at Madison Square Garden. Fight got rebooked for Vegas. Boring. Not boring, but not a good fight. And that's a name value fight. Not a good fight. Both these guys should be done with the sport. Moving up the card from there, another issue with the card, and it didn't result in the fight being canceled, but it did result in some very controversial things going into this fight. Bryan Battle missed weight by 5 pounds, or 4, I guess. He came in at 175 for a fight at 170. They give you a 1 pound allowance, so he missed by 4 pounds. You need to get to 171. He came in at 175. Randy Brown made weight, and I thought Randy Brown won this fight. I'm going to be honest. I picked Bryan Battle. I did good on picks. I went like 9-5 on the night for picks, but A couple of them were split decisions that went in favor of guys that I picked who I thought should have lost. In my opinion, Bryan Battle should have lost that fight. It was kind of rough seeing him go from the whole, y'all thought the Butcher was going to lose to a French dude in a fist fight, which crazy pop. And then he got booed last night because he missed weight, won a controversial decision. It wasn't that exciting. Bryan Battle got the win. I think this sets him back 2 fights from getting a ranked opponent. Maybe 1 fight. Randy Brown, 19-6, but he's only lost to the best. Like, he has lost to absolute killers, and Bryan Battle, being one of the guys that has beat him, actually puts Bryan Battle in some elite company. So moving on from there, Bryan Battle gets the win. A little bit disappointing on the mic after, disappointing at the scales on Friday, disappointing in the cage as well, but he got the win. This happens. Everybody has one of these fights that's iffy, not necessarily missing weight, but just an iffy win on their way up to the top. This happens. I think Bryan Battle still has a very bright future. He's just got to get the weight under control because he is a former middleweight, so he's a big welterweight. Randy Brown looked bigger than him, though, and he made weight. So the weight is something that Bryan Battle's got to get under control. He didn't lose just the battle at the scales. He lost the battle at the Thanksgiving dinner table as well. Now, we move on from there. Movsar Evloev beats Aljamain Sterling by decision, split decision, went to Evloev. Movsar moves on to 19-0, still has 0 finishes in the UFC. Aljo is now 24-5. Personally, I thought Aljo won this fight. I thought Aljo got screwed a little bit. I see the argument for Movsar, but personally, I thought Aljo won this fight. It was a lot of grappling exchanges, and I thought there was a lot of times that Aljo got the best of. I think I gave Aljo 1-3 or 1-2. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's what happens when you stream for 7 hours, but I thought Movsar should have lost this fight. I think that this was like the perfect matchup for the UFC because they don't want Aljo or Movsar becoming champion. So they just knocked Aljo down the rankings. Now Aljo's going to have to fight like a Dan Ige at the Apex or something like that. Movsar, maybe they do Diego Lopez rematch. Settle that while they do Volkan Topuria too. That sounds okay to me, but Movsar just has no sense of urgency. He's incredibly talented. He's a lot better on the feet than he has been in the past. His English is actually pretty good on the mic, so there's a little bit of potential there. To gain a fan base, especially speaking English. You saw Khabib do it. You saw Islam do it. Umar do it. When these Russian guys can speak English, they definitely become a lot more fan favorites. And Movsar has pretty good English. So another note, Movsar doesn't eat sugar ever. And you can tell his physique is absolutely insane. No Jones, no Diddy. Moving on from there, one of my worst picks on the night. I had Themba Gorimbo by like early knockout. He got dropped and submitted in less than a minute by Vicente Luque. Vicente Luque accepted the short notice opponent. He was ready for Nick Diaz. This young, explosive, up-and-comer steps in. He accepts the fight. Themba Gorimbo goes right after him, throwing long, snappy 1-2s. I was like, dang, Vicente Luque is going to get caught, especially because he quit against Joaquin Buckley, and he just hasn't looked good. And he had the whole brain hemorrhaging thing after that one fight, too. So I thought Themba Gorimbo was going to just absolutely smoke Vicente Luque. Right hook for Luque. During an exchange, drops Gorimbo, goes to a guillotine, switches to an anaconda, puts Gorimbo to sleep. That's a performance bonus type of performance for me. That was fantastic. I'm actually glad that I got that one wrong because I was happy to see Vicente Luque win, especially after the whole brain hemorrhaging thing and all of that. Good to see him in the win column. Oh, and then Vicente Luque actually ended up calling out George Masvidal. He said, I want a top 5 or 10 guy, but if not, George Masvidal's coming back. Let's do April in Miami. That seems to be the talk. Jorge Masvidal coming back in April to the UFC. There's been talk of Michael Chandler at 170, and now Vicente Luque has thrown his name in the hat. Moving on from there, we have Dominick Reyes and Anthony Lionheart Smith. I've talked a lot of shit about Anthony Smith. I think he's delusional. I think that he is completely misguided about where he stands in the UFC, about his skill set, about fights that he's had. His opinions are terrible. But with all that said, he lost a friend and a coach out of 57 or 58 pro fights. This friend and coach of his that passed away had only not been there for one of them. So 58 fights, that guy was there for 56 of them. And Lionheart Smith just got beat on brutally. It did not look like he was trying to strategically win a fight. He looked like he was going through an emotional experience in there in the cage. And Dominick Reyes said in the post-fight interview after that Anthony Smith said, "Hit me, I want to feel something." And that's just rough stuff. I mean, I understand you're a fighter. You lost a friend. That was your coach and all of that. But you don't need to be in here taking damage for that. You don't need to be in here taking damage for that reason. You're in here as pro athletes. You don't need to be going in there and getting brain cells taken away and years taken off your life for that. But, you know, whatever. He's a grown man. That's what he decided to do. Dana White did say that Weidman, Smith, and Guida should all retire after this. They've all fought a bunch of times. They've had bad injuries. They've gotten hit in the head a bunch of times. They're in their 40s. It's time to move on, especially Lionheart Smith. He has a good career as an analyst and a podcaster. For as much shit as I've talked about on Anthony Smith for this channel, I got nothing bad to say about this situation. It's a tough situation, lost a friend, and he didn't look good. He got beat up really, really badly. And yeah, that's that. Dominick Reyes looked really good. He was in there against a very obviously like emotionally and mentally compromised opponent. But 2 wins in a row for Dom Reyes. I say we fast track Dom Reyes. Get him a top 6 guy. Get him like one win from a title shot. He beat John Jones, arguably, okay? I think we just throw him right back up there and be like, all right, cool. Let's see where he's at. Is he an Apex main event against washed veterans like himself? Or is he an elite guy? So I think you throw him right up there, top 5 guy. Give him like, fuck, who do you give? Well, you know what? Top 5 guy. I'll do a fights to make video for Dom Reyes and all the fighters on this card too. Moving on from there, Choi against Nate the Train. I got this one wrong. I picked Nate the Train. I thought he was going to survive the early storm from Choi and then win a late stoppage. But Choi was on crispy boxing and just frankly beat the piss out of Nate Landwehr. Nate Landwehr was aggressive, doing his best the entire time. He just couldn't figure it out. He couldn't figure out the boxing. He couldn't figure out the range. Choi was way crispier than him, way faster than him. And then you could tell even Nate the Train started losing focus because Choi was kind of playing with him. He hit him with a couple of foot sweeps that I don't think Nate the Train would normally get hit with, but he gets hit with the foot sweep. Choi in the 3rd round gets a crucifix, elbows from the crucifix. And I believe it was Mark Goddard. He gave Nate the Train he gave him every opportunity to get out of it. Nate the Train was in this crucifix, fighting it, swinging his legs, trying to throw Choi off top for 2 minutes. I think it was 90 seconds. He was eating elbows and it was a good stoppage. I mean, I thought that one actually could have gotten stopped a lot sooner because he wasn't getting beat up terribly in that crucifix. He was actually getting beat up worse on the feet, but he just was stuck. He was completely flattened out in the crucifix and he just didn't have a chance to get out, in my opinion. So I thought that should have gotten stopped sooner. Choi, ranked opponent. Let's see what's up. He called for a ranking. He looked crispy. I think he deserves it. Moving on from there, we open up the main card. Bryce Mitchell, Kron Gracie. I had a lot to say about this matchup when it got booked. Really should not have been booked at all. I mean, you literally had Nate the Train and Choi on this card. I would have done Bryce Mitchell and Nate the Train, something like that. I think we had another featherweight fight on this card. Oh, the Movsar Aljo fight. Okay, yeah, so never mind. But this fight didn't make any sense. People in my comments in the video about this fight getting booked, oh, they're trying to get Bryce a win because he took a lot of damage. They're going to have him fight a jiu-jitsu guy. That's not how the UFC books fights. But I'll say this. Bryce Mitchell looked amazing. Genuinely, like Bryce Mitchell actually looked amazing. Knees in the clinch. He would go like 1-2, knee up the middle. He would defend takedown attempts from Kron Gracie with knees. And he was throwing nice leg kicks, great grappling. And then he eventually KO'd Kron Gracie. Kron Gracie tried to pull guard, jumped on Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell had him here. He adjusted his forearm onto the front of Kron Gracie's face and slammed him up against, or slammed him on the ground, which that's what I think KO'd Kron Gracie. And then the elbows and punches afterwards kind of just sealed it. But I think he was out when he hit the ground. Kron Gracie cut him from the sport. Go teach a jiu-jitsu class. Literally astonishing that you're in the UFC with that skill set and that you're pulling guard and boot scooting in the UFC in almost 2025. We are 3 weeks from 2025 and you're boot scooting. Insane. And pulling guard. Every single round he pulled guard. Didn't try to defend a takedown. He said, cool. And then he would stall. Almost never opened his guard either. So terrible, 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 terrible. Kron Gracie needs to be out of the sport. Just a disgrace. We had these fights right here on the prelims. Movsar Aljo, Chiesa Griffin, Josh Van. These were all banger fights that could have gotten a sick main card placement. And they do this fucking fight that makes no sense. And Kron Gracie goes out there and embarrasses himself and embarrasses the sport. So that's my opinion. Genuinely, I think that was crazy. Moving on from there, I knew that this was going to happen, guys. I picked Ciryl Gane. I knew that the second that it went to decision, I'm going to throw the video in right here. Telling you controversial decisions always go to the guy that the UFC wants to win. And I know the UFC wants Ciryl Gane to win. I'm telling you, if he even makes it look close, he'll get the decision. The commentary team is making it sound like Volkov hasn't got this in the bag. I smell a Ciryl Gane split decision win. I will be shocked if Ciryl Gane wins this fight, but the way that they're saying it, the commentary is leaving an opening for Ciryl Gane to win a split decision here. Oh my God, on the numbers, it looks like Ciryl Gane won, though. Split decision. It's going to be Ciryl Gane. Yes. I knew it. I knew it. I knew that they were going to pick Ciryl Gane. I knew he was going to get a split decision win because they want Ciryl Gane versus Tom Aspinall if Jon Jones decides to retire. And controversial split decisions always go in favor of the guy that the UFC kind of wants to win, such as Paddy Pimblett over Jared Gordon. No, he lost this fight. I mean, like I see there's like arguments where they say they both got hurt in the second. I'll talk about this in a separate video, but I thought Volkov won the fight and I picked Ciryl Gane. So Ciryl Gane actually shot takedowns on Volkov, unexpected, went for a heel hook in round one. He was going for a Kimura from bottom. I think that was just because he was stalling and tired in the third. But honestly, a weird scene. Ciryl Gane left the cage because he thought he lost. He thought he performed like shit, all these different things. But Volkov won that fight. Volkov got screwed. And yeah, now Ciryl Gane's probably set up for Tom Aspinall after that. So one thing I do know for sure, though, especially after seeing that fight, Tom Aspinall smokes Gane and Volkov. He already has smoked Volkov, but he smokes them both. Moving up from there, Ciryl Gane's going to get the winner of Aspinall-Jones, or if Jones retires, he's going to get Aspinall for Undisputed. Moving up from there, the most anticipated undefeated matchup, prospect matchup, all these different things that we've had in a while, Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Ian Machado Garry. Shavkat wins by decision 4-1, 49-46. Ian Garry looked very good. He just needs to be more aggressive. He's too cute. Like, you need to just mix it up. Give us a freaking 1-2, rip the body, come back up, or 1-2, rip the body, leg kick. But he just jab, backing up, jab, backing up, jab. Switch head kick kind of lands on Shavkat's hand, backing up. Now, I do have to give it to Ian Garry. He did come in on a short notice, not much time to prep for Shavkat, who is a former training partner who people say has dominated Ian Garry in the gym, knocked him out and subbed him, they say. Ian Garry showed up. The takedown defense was good, but in the early rounds, he struggled to get off the fence, and that's where Shavkat kind of just wasted those rounds away. He'd win a little bit on the feet. He'd land a couple shots. They'd feint at each other for a minute. Shavkat lands a 1-2, so there's some damage. Clinch up against the fence. End of the round. You win rounds. It wasn't the most exciting fight for Shavkat to win because he didn't get a finish, but it was a humanizing performance for Shavkat. And I think Machado Garry going up against a destroyer like that, I think he looked really, really good. As much hate as Ian Garry gets, I think he deserves nothing but props. He made Shavkat look human last night. He said that in his post-fight interview, and I agree with him. Ian Garry almost finished Shavkat in round 4. He had Shavkat deep in a choke twice. Shavkat's looking up at the camera, all types of stuff. Shavkat toughs it out. Shavkat's not the type of guy to tap out. 19-0 for Shavkat. 15-1. A couple of things. I think Shavkat smokes Bilal. They brought Bilal into the cage after, and the security didn't know Bilal was the champ. Shavkat looks way bigger than Bilal. Shavkat's going to smoke Bilal, in my opinion. I think he's going to absolutely beat the piss out of him. And yeah, that's that. Ian Garry, I think he earns a top 5 matchup. I think he earns like a Jack Della Maddalena, a Kamaru Usman, somebody like that. I don't think you have him fight down after that. He fought the #1 guy undefeated, and he's the first guy to ever go to decision. He almost finished him in the 4th. As much hate as Ian Garry gets, he deserves a lot of respect for that fight, in my opinion. Moving on from there, Alexandre Pantoja makes his 3rd title defense at flyweight with a 2nd-round submission of Kai Asakura via rear naked choke. Kai Asakura, hear me out, guys. I don't think he's going to fight in the UFC again. He was a famous YouTuber, made a lot of money there, made a bunch of money in Ryzen. I think this was goal chasing. We were talking about this in my chat on the live stream, the watch party yesterday. I personally think this was goal chasing. I don't think Kai Asakura fights in the UFC again, honestly. Maybe he does and fights like a Moreno, or they do Asakura versus Tatsuro Taira as a fight night in Japan, because they probably still want to break into the Japanese market, and they were hoping Asakura won this fight. But either I think they do Taira versus Asakura in Japan, or Asakura never fights for the UFC again, honestly. He looked huge in there, explosive, but he got hurt badly with that left hook by Pantoja about a minute into the fight. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. He's not ready for this type of level. Pantoja's a buzzsaw, and he just ran right through him. Pantoja's an animal, and he called out Demetrius Johnson after getting a sub in round 2. DJ doesn't want to fight again, so that's not going to happen. We're probably going to get Royval Pantoja 3 or Moreno Pantoja 4. Yeah, flyweights in shambles right now, so we'll see what happens. Pantoja doesn't want to move up to Pantoja doesn't want to move up to bantamweight now that Sean O'Malley's not the champ anymore. So we'll have to see what the UFC comes up with. Maybe they sign another guy. Maybe they sign Rod Tang or something to fight at 125. Yeah, it's just the division's in shambles. Very bottom heavy pay-per-view, actually. Like the main event was not very hyped, and it was very dominant. A couple of really weird decisions, such as them booking Bryce Mitchell and then him just dominating Kron Gracie, and then Ciryl Gane getting a robbery win, Shavkat having a kind of weird fight where it wasn't crazy exciting, but it was tense the whole time, and there was some big moments. But I'd say overall, I give this card like an 8 out of 10. Like if UFC 300 is a 10 out of 10, that's the best that they can put on. This is like a 7.5 or an 8 because it was insane prelims. Like on paper, this is an insane card, especially if Shavkat versus Bilal would have been the main event. Overall, I'm not mad. It was a fun card. I streamed for 7.5 hours for this card. It was good. I liked it. So I'm going to do some individual videos and go a little bit more in depth with some of these fights, especially the Ciryl Gane Volkov decision and a couple things like that. We have a lot of videos coming out in these next few days as we push towards the end of the year for UFC. Yeah, so let me know your thoughts down below. What fight did you like the most? Did you think Ciryl Gane got a robbery win? Did you think Volkov got robbed, or do you think Ciryl Gane should have won? Let me know your thoughts down below. I'm Wyatt. This is Fight Society. Thanks for watching this video. Please make sure to like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. It really helps me out a lot. If you want access to bonus content, become a channel member today by clicking the join button on our channel homepage or the link down below this video. If you're interested in some non-MMA content from me, go check out my podcast, What's Up Bro, with Wyatt and Bo, in the link down below. Go watch this suggested video, and I'll see you next time.